StraightallDay.com.
You're now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself. It's going to make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques, all underneath the umbrella of one unifying philosophy that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is, this is the first of what is going to be a four-part series on the subject of resilience. We're going to talk about how to build resilience in your life. How can you be a more resilient individual? Now, before we get started, let me remind you all, I have a daily motivation text. I send this out free of charge every day to everyone who's in my text community. A message guaranteed to keep you focused, sharp, and on point. You want to receive that? And I think you would. Text me at my number, 305-384-6894. And every day when this message comes out, you shall receive it. Other thing I want to tell you before we get started is workonyourgameuniversity.com is where you take your next step to working with me directly. You want to get access to all the courses like Bulletproof Mindset, People Skills, Business Builder, Content Machine, ASAP Confidence, 25 hours, 30 days of discipline, and Work on Your Game system, and a whole lot more. All the exclusive trainings. That is all at workonyourgameuniversity.com. Now, getting into the subject, how to be more resilient. First of all, let's get a definition of this word resilience. It is defined as able to withstand or recover quickly from difficult conditions. And being that in life, we know that not everything's going to go according to plan. Sometimes things will be going good for a little bit, and then they're going to not be going so good. Sometimes things just start off not going good, and we got to figure it out. And we got to dig ourselves out of a situation that we might not even be responsible for. And despite all this work on your game stuff that you and I are doing, and even if you apply every single thing I've ever said on the show, there are times in life you are going to face challenges. Sometimes what you're doing is simply not working. Sometimes people will disappoint you. Circumstances go opposite from how you want them to go, and you are left to pick up the pieces. So how can you be a more resilient individual who has the ability to recover quickly from such conditions? That's a good question. We're going to answer it here. And again, this is a four-part series, so today is just part 1 of 4 on the subject of resilience. Point number 1. Topic again today is how to be a more resilient individual. Number 1, you need a positive attitude. Positive mental attitude. This is one of the 17 principles of success that Napoleon Hill laid out in his seminal book, Think and Grow Rich, which are also detailed on this very show, in this very feed, and that was in episodes 183 and 184. Napoleon Hill's 17 Principles of Personal Achievement, parts 1 and 2. And remember that principles, everybody, are hardwired. Principles are not things that you just pick up as you go along whenever you feel like it. These are things that you have in place all the time. I talk about this in episode 2211. Principles, then strategies, then tactics. Principles are non-negotiable. Principles do not change. They are rigid. They are hardwired. So you need to make, if you want to be a resilient individual, a positive mental attitude needs to be one of your principles. As a general rule, people with a positive attitude succeed more often and are more likely to succeed than people who have a negative attitude. There are times when negative energy is useful. By the way, I've actually talked about this here on this show. Let me see where I talked about it. That was episode number, I first told you how to deal with negative people around you, episode 562. If you have a boss, parent, or coach who is negative, how to actually deal with it, in episode 502. How to use negative energy for positive outcomes. There are times you can use negative energy, but in a general sense, you generally want to have a positive attitude more often than you have a negative attitude, or you'll kill yourself with having a negative attitude all the time. Like literally, you give yourself a heart attack. The generally positive attitude outperforms the generally negative attitude. Would you agree? What reasons do you have? This is a question. What reasons do you have to be positive about your life, your career, your business, your relationships, your direction right now, today? You should have answers to this question. Let me get a question again, just in case you missed it. What reasons do you have to be positive about your situation? Think of every aspect of your life. What reasons do you have to be, did I say negative? Should have said positive. What reasons do you have to be positive about your current situation in life? Every aspect of your life, why should you feel good about it? You should think about this, ask yourself the question, answer the question, and the answers that you come up with, write them down. You need to have these committed to paper. If you haven't read my book called The Mental Workbook, which if you're watching on videos right here over my left shoulder, and if you're not watching on videos, just go to workonmygame.com/workbook and get the book. You should get this book, The Mental Workbook, because in this book, I show you exactly how to do this on a day-to-day basis. Yes, not one time, day to day. The reason why you do it every day and not just one time is because you are conditioning your mind to think positively, not just doing a positive thought experiment as a one-off thing. I mean, thinking positively one time, what is that going to do for you 3 months from now? Absolutely nothing. You're not even going to remember that you did it. So this positive mental attitude is something that needs to be hardwired into you. That's why I mentioned that it's a principle. And that's why Napoleon Hill said 17 principles of success. These are not tactics of success. These are not hacks to success. They are principles of success, meaning they are etched in stone. They are the foundation. They never change. Point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is how to be resilient. We're on part 1 of 4 in a 4-part series here. Number 2, self-awareness. If you want to be a more resilient individual, you must be aware of who you are so you know which buttons of yours you should press and when to press them. That's part of your resilience, because not everyone is activated by the same trigger points. See, some people get triggered positively by certain stimuli, whereas others, they are triggered negatively by the exact same situation. This could be the exact same thing. I could say the exact same thing to 2 different people and get a completely different response from each of them. One person might completely ignore me and dismiss what I said, or another person gets very activated by what I said in a positive or a negative direction. A third person could go the opposite of where they went, but get very activated. So you need to know what your points are so that you know how to push the right buttons, so to speak, for yourself when necessary, or where to go when you need to get that energy, or when you need to calm down. You need to know what these things are. You need to know what it takes to put yourself in your most productive state. Because some people, to get themselves in a productive state, they like to think about things like rainbows, flowers, and puppy dogs, or things that make you happy, like your kids. Other people, to get themselves in their most productive state, you might think along the lines of being more competitive. Like I talked about this in episode, I believe it was 863, but let me check. Episode 963, how to let your dog out when it comes to competition. And also episode 853, competition, you have to be a dog. So some people, that's what works for them. Thinking about competition, thinking about winning, thinking about a situation where you did not win, but you want to be ready to win the next time, or if you had another chance at that situation, and that's what activates you. But it's different for every human being. It's like a combination lot. So you need to know what your combination is that gets you activated to be at your most productive, so that you can perform and do what you need to do, especially when you're in a challenging situation, when you're going to need resilience. See, other people, it might not even be an internal thing. It might not be something that's happening in your mind. You like to look for something external that gets you going. So maybe you need somebody else to say or do something to you, or you need to see something or read something or watch something, and that's what gets you going. Other people like to turn inward, again, think of something that exists only in their minds. You might just make up a story in your mind, and that gets you where you need to be so you can go out and do your thing. But whatever it is, it's different for each one of us. You must know what works for you, because when you know, then you can go to it when necessary. You can open up that safe when you need to open up that safe, and when you need to call on your resilience, you have a go-to. You're not sitting there wondering, hey, what am I going to do now? I'm in this situation. I know I need to do something, but I don't know what to do. You don't want to be in that circumstance. You want to be in a situation where, okay, I knew this was coming. Now I'm already prepared for it. Here's what I'm going to do, so you can deal with it immediately. You're not trying to figure it out on the fly. This is why in the sports world, we do this in business as well, but in sports specifically, we have practice. The reason why we have practice in sports is because we are practicing and preparing for how we're going to execute the plays, how we're going to execute during the game. The coach says we're going to run play number 3. We already know what play number 3 is because we practiced it 1,000 times. So in the game, nobody's asking themselves, well, how do we run play number 3? Well, we already know what it is because we practiced it so many times that in the game, we'll just execute immediately. That's the whole point. That's what they do in basketball, they do it in football, they do it even in baseball. They have the practice, and hockey as well. They have the practice, soccer, so that we can just do stuff without having to think about it. You want to have yourself set up the same way. That's why I had the mental workbook, so you can do the mental practice to get yourself ready. So when you get into the live situation in your everyday life, you don't have to stop and think about, what do I do? This is another reason why I'm an advocate of meditation. The reason that you meditate is not because that 10 minutes or 30 minutes or hour long meditation that you do is going to make everything perfect when you stop meditating, when you wake up, it's so that you're practicing getting yourself into a calm, Zen-like state during that 30 minutes of meditation. So during the other 23 hours and 30 minutes of the day, when you're facing other situations and people who are not calm and not Zen-like, you can go there because you practice doing it. You get what I'm saying? That's the reason why you do this. So you should know more about yourself than you know about anyone or anything else. That's the self-awareness aspect that will help you be a more resilient individual, because after all, you have to live with yourself forever. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is how to be a more resilient individual. Number 3, adaptability. This is a key skill of resilience simply because things in life are always changing. Circumstances never stay exactly the same. Change is the only constant in life, so you should be very willing and able to adapt and adjust as necessary, because circumstances are never exactly the same from one moment to the next. Not even human beings stay the same from one point to the next. People change week by week, month by month, year by year. Can we agree? Understand that resilience does not mean being obstinate and staying the same no matter what circumstances you face. You will make adjustments over time. Part of your resilience is making the adjustments that need to be made as things go on. It also means being able to bend to circumstance, adjust yourself, and make changes whenever change is necessary. Any of you who considers yourself to be successful, or anyone listening to this who you are looked at by your peers or your family members or whoever, you are looked at as a successful individual, ask yourself the following question. Are you doing the exact same things, the exact same procedures, and have the exact same mindsets now that you had 10 years ago? For most of you, the answer is absolutely not. You have adjusted in some ways. Now, some of your principles, I would bet most of your principles are probably the same. Maybe you have added some, but for the most part, they're generally the same. But your approaches, your strategies, your tactics, the things that you're doing, the people you hang with, the way that you show up, the way you present yourself, all of those things are probably a lot different now than they were 10 years ago. Why? Because you made adjustments. You adapted over time to your change in mindset. You adapted to the change maybe in careers. You adapted to change in relationships. You adapted to how you wanted to present yourself and how you wanted to be perceived. All of those things can be adjusted over time. Doesn't mean your principles change, but your strategies and tactics, they absolutely can change. And this is what adaptability is about. Think of something like the iPhone. As of this recording, I have an iPhone. I believe this is a 13 iPhone that I have. And you think back to like the iPhone 1, first iPhone, or the iPhone 2, has that phone evolved over time? The general idea of the phone is pretty much the same, as Steve Jobs famously sold it as a computer, an MP3 player, and a phone all in one device. All right, it's still that. You still got that. You got a computer, you got an MP3 player, and you got a phone all in one device. That's what the iPhone is. But over time, they adapted and added things that people wanted that weren't always there. So you got the ability to copy and paste. You have a camera. You got a video camera. You got the selfie camera. You got all different kinds of cameras they have on here. They had a cinematic version of the camera to where they had things blurred out. You got the time lapse. You got the portrait version, you got the panoramic version. All of these things are things that have been added to adjust the phone and do other things. The phone has more capacity now than it had in the past. It has longer battery power than it had in the past. It has a stronger operating system than it's had. And there's a whole lot of other bells and whistles they keep adding to the iPhone with every version of the phone. And over time, it starts doing other things. They're adapting to the needs and the wants of the consumer, because they're in business. That's exactly what they're supposed to do. And you should be doing the exact same thing, is adapting yourself to your own needs and wants, because you're your number one consumer. You're your top customer. So where is it you're trying to go? What adjustments, what adaptations do you need to make to take yourself to that next level, whatever it may be? Remember what Bruce Lee said about being water. Famous martial arts master Bruce Lee. He said, if you put water in a cup, the water becomes the cup. If you put water in a bottle, the water becomes the bottle. Water always adjusts to its circumstance, everybody. That's what water does. You need to be adaptable like water is. I mean, water doesn't change from being water, even though it was in a bottle yesterday, is in a cup today, and it's in a stream tomorrow. It's still the same thing. It hasn't changed itself. It just adjusts to its situation. You need to be able to do that. Adjust to your situation, because anyone who doesn't adjust to their situation, you're going to get bent and eventually broken, because situations will force you to change. So you should go along with this change while maintaining your principles. That's the balance that you need to develop. Is maintaining your principles at the same time going along with the change that is happening around you, because there's always change happening around us at all times. Change is the only guarantee and constant in life. Let's recap today's class, which is part 1 of 4 on how to be a more resilient individual. Definition of resilience is able to withstand or recover quickly from difficult conditions. And again, no matter how hard you work on your game, there will be times when things aren't going right, and you have to have the ability to recover from that situation and get back on track. Here's how you do it. Point number 1, positive mental attitude. Napoleon Hill talked about this in his 17 Principles of Success. That positive attitude will help you in everything in life, and you want to have it conditioned into your mind, not something you do one time. You get it conditioned by getting the mental workbook at workonmygame.com/workbook. Point number 2, self-awareness. You got to know yourself. You got to know what triggers you, what activates you, what gets you going, what slows you down, what calms you down, what gets you hyped. You need to know what these things are, so when the time comes and you need to get yourself into a certain state, you are able to do it on call. Michael Jordan talked about this when he came back from his first retirement from basketball. He played baseball for a minute, came back. The Chicago Bulls were still pretty good, but they didn't win the championship. Michael Jordan said he thinks what's missing. What he said was what was missing was I couldn't get myself into the right state on call. I was still pretty damn good. Jordan was still Jordan, but I couldn't get myself into the state that I needed to get to with a snap of a finger like I used to. And that's because he hadn't been doing the work. He'd been playing baseball. So when he spent the following offseason doing the work again, he was able to get back to that state on call, and they went on and won the next 3 championships. Self-awareness. You need to know what gets you where you need to be. Number 3, adaptability. Adaptability does not mean you change your principles over time. Fundamentally, you do not change. Just like the iPhone fundamentally has not changed, but you make adjustments over time, and you make upgrades, and you make yourself better, and you adjust to the situation as necessary. Sometimes you can make the situation adjust to you. Sometimes you have to adjust to the situation, and you have to be able to read the room, as we talked about yesterday, and knowing which situation calls for what. Do you need to adjust, or can you force the adjustment? But you have to be willing to adapt as necessary, adapt and evolve and grow with the situation the same way that you have over the last 10 years. You've adapted, you've evolved, and you've grown. And there's a reason why you continue to succeed. So now, again, the next 3 episodes will be going into parts 2, 3, and 4 on this series on how to be a more resilient individual. Text me, tell me the best insight you got from today's class. My number is 305-384-6894, and workonyourgameuniversity.com. You get into our mindset courses like Bulletproof Mindset, Sell Yourself, Toughen Up, Content Machine, 30 Days to Discipline, Work on Your Game System, Business Builder, Your Body, Your Health, Next Mission. All of those available at workonyourgameuniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre all day.